morning to some, good afternoon to others. This is Angelica Vilpondo. I'm with the Council for Opportunity and Education, and we are delighted you are with us today on writing a competitive conference proposal. We are excited about this year's hybrid conference, either attendees being at their home or in sunny San Diego. Today, I have with me a number of people who are helping put this conference together. I would like them to introduce themselves. So can I have Andrea, then Amy, then Brian, then Barney?
Good morning. I'm Andrea Reeve, and I'm the COE Conference Program Chair, and I'm so pleased that you're joining us this morning. I can't emphasize how important it is that we have a very strong conference program. People come to attend the conference because they're interested in improving both their professional background and in addition to networking that's going on. So we really do count on having a strong program. So thank you so much for attending this session. By the way, I should say I'm a retired TRIO director, having worked with most of the TRIO programs starting in 1983. Amy?
Well, good morning, everyone, or as Angelica said, good afternoon if you're out on the East Coast. My name is Amy Berlanek, and I've been directing TRIO programs in Montana since the early 90s and have been a volunteer with COE since that time, and really enjoy participating in this particular training because I know when I came into TRIO, I didn't really have the confidence or knowledge, as much knowledge as it was confidence about how this all comes to be, how someone gets chosen to present at a regional or a national conference. So having this background, I think, is really important for all of our practitioners. So really happy to have all of you here and to share with you today.
Hello, everybody. I'm Brian Post. I am the director of the SUNY Plattsburgh Upward Bound programs, and I am also a member of the Partnership Standards and Initiatives Committee, and that's why I'm on this call. So welcome, everyone.
Good day, everyone. Oh, sorry.
You're okay.
Good day, everyone. I'm Barney Nye. I'm the Associate Vice President for Grants Outreach and Partnerships at Utah Valley University, and I've been with TRIO program since I was a participant in Upward Bound in the early 90s. So all of this is close to my heart. I serve on the same committee as Brian, and I'm also President-elect for the Aspire region.
All right, so we have a great team here today with us, and so let's get started. Okay, so what is COE? So for those of you on the webinar today, may have heard about annual conference that you thought would be, it would relate directly to what organization or program that you're with, but you're not really familiar with the Council for Opportunity and Education. We are the national organization for college access and success. Our main advocacy focus is TRIO programs, but we do a lot of professional development for anyone who oversees any college or access and success programs. We are a membership organization, meaning that your institution or agency could pay membership to us and you would get benefits from that. But again, we also do advocate on Capitol Hill for federal funding for TRIO programs. And but through membership, you get a discount to coming to our conferences. We have one coming up in just a couple of weeks, our umbrella policy seminar, but that consists of 3 different seminars in one. And then our annual conference that we're talking about today in San Diego this year. Now, one thing I did forget to mention is if you have any questions for the panelists, please put them into the Q&A box. If you want to say something to the group, as a comment or responding to something that we ask, please put that into the chat, right? So if you have a direct question for one of us, one of the panelists, please put it into the question and answers. We appreciate that. All right, so a few COE conference proposal trends. So we are the largest and most long-running successful professional development conference for all access and success professionals. About 90% of the attendees will be with a TRIO program, and 10% would be other college access or success professionals or supervisors of an umbrella program that may run TRIO in state and private college and access programs at their campus. But that is our demographics for this upcoming conference. We typically have in the last 3 years, closer to 500 newcomers annually. In 2020, we went completely virtual because of the pandemic. In 2021, we did a hybrid, and we will continue to do a hybrid probably forevermore, right? And this gives COE the opportunity to reach more college access and success professionals, because we saw with a trend in Atlanta, now take it as that, right, that we are in a pandemic, so it just depended if you could travel, if you wanted to travel, if you felt comfortable. But we did see where a number of directors were with us in person, and they had a number of their staff back at home participating virtually. So you have a lot of opportunity for recognition at COE's annual conference. We typically have anywhere from 1,700 to 2,200 attend. I believe last year we hit over the 2,000 mark, so you are hitting a high number of professionals. So approximately more than half proposals in our breakout sessions are chosen from submissions in this call for proposals. COE makes up probably about 40% of the concurrent or breakout sessions, and 60% come from the field or from people who propose submissions. All right, and there are different ways that you can present. You can have a co-presenter, you could be a single presenter, you could a panel would be 3 or more, right? You could be a panel. We also have, which we'll be talking about a little bit later in the presentation, a whole slot of sessions that are called COE Ed Talks, where they get, you provide a little bit of content, but most of the session is the participants talking to one another on certain topics. All right, so some information for you about our upcoming conference. It is September 21st through the 24th. Again, either in sunny San Diego, I'll keep saying that because it's a little chilly here in Maryland, so I want to feel the sun, or at least pretend I feel the sun. So I'm not in Hawaii like Andrea and Amy are, which, as you can see, I'm oozing with jealousy. So it's September 21st through the 24th. For those of you who have never attended a COE conference, the 21st is our first day, and we do not actually start until the evening with opening plenary and then a reception for everybody attending our conference. The breakouts then will take place on September 22nd, which will be a Thursday this year, and September 23rd, which will be a Friday this year. Those are where the breakout sessions take place. We have, as you can see, our logo is this beautiful. Our comms department wanted it to be very focused on and branded with the sunshine and the waves, as we are going to San Diego. And our theme this year is Opportunity Matters, Discovering Solutions, Expanding Horizons. Okay. Again, if you have any questions for the panelists, please put them into the Q&A box. Okay, so a few more specifics about the 2022 conference. Again, it's going to be held in a hybrid model where both virtual and in-person attendees could participate. Now, for a presenter, and I think we do talk a little bit more about this later, but I do want to bring it up as you're thinking about this. We are asking presenters to be in San Diego with us. All right, so if you do want to submit a presentation, you will need to be with us in San Diego. Registration is open. It's on our conference website. If you are a part of our mailing list, you haven't seen too much about it, and that's because we are really focused on our policy seminar right now. Come April 1st, you'll probably get all things annual conference up until September. Our hotel is open. It is at the beautiful San Diego Hilton Bayfront. It is a new hotel for COE. We've never hosted an annual conference at this hotel in San Diego, and it is quite gorgeous, and it would just be a wonderful experience if you wanted to bring your family with you as well, out to San Diego with you. Lovely pools, you're at the beach. It's just a gorgeous venue. We ask that all presenters, if you are accepted to be a presenter, we ask that you are registered for our conference by May 30th, 2022. You will receive this slide deck when we send out the recording. And so all of these links will be hyperlinked, and you will be able to just click on them once you receive the slide deck. Okay, as I've said before, this is a hybrid format. Last year was the first time that we did this. And so, growing pains, learning pains, we went from completely in person to completely virtual to now this in between, right? And so we again will host in a hybrid conference where all of the plenaries will be streamed out both to in-person and attendees. In person, you'll be in the room with us. Attendees, you'll be with us on a computer, laptop, your phone, whatever that you may want to be on. Because of the hybrid model, we have downsized how many concurrent sessions that we have at a time. Typically, when we were in person only, we used to have anywhere from 20 to 23 sessions going on at one time. Now we've condensed it to 14 concurrent sessions, which is fantastic because our rooms are more filled. There's less competition in the sense, and it gives you a good chance to have a really good amount of people in your room when you're presenting, if you are successful. Okay. And again, and I think we'll say this a couple of times just so that you guys can kind of get it into your brain, that at this moment, unless something happens like Omicron did for us in Atlanta, we really ask, if you're going to submit a proposal, that you are in the mindset that you are attending our conference in San Diego. Okay, we are trying very hard not to have virtual presentations in San Diego. Okay. All right, so here are some deadlines for you. Sure.
Jelly, I wanted to add one thing about the hybrid format for presenters, and that is that it's actually a very rich environment. In Atlanta, I had one presenter who was there in person. She was presenting later because we were in the East. And so she was actually presenting at 4 p.m. And I thought, okay, well, hopefully a lot of people will be there. It's 4 to 5:30, right? She had 40 people in person, but she had 60 people virtually. That was over 100 people who were in her presentation from 4 to 5:30 in the afternoon. And so it was a very rich environment, lots of interaction, both virtually and in person. So it can be a very satisfying way to present.
I totally agree with you, Andrea. Thank you for that comment. I have seen that as well. Now, again, as I said before, we're going to have some hiccups. We're hoping to smooth out some of the hiccups that we had in Atlanta. We're all learning this together. But I do think, as Andrea pointed out, you do have the opportunity to reach a lot more professionals in this hybrid environment. The timeline. So our call for presentations opened March 1st. It actually opened a week earlier, but formally it opened a couple of days ago. The deadline for submission for our call for proposals is April 4th. We hope that if you are interested in submitting a proposal that you would do this before or on April 4th. It will close at 11:59 p.m. Eastern time, okay, on April 4th. So you will be notified by May 20th. It's a pretty quick turnaround. And that gives you time to, if you hadn't registered for our conference, that gives you time to register for our conference. And we ask that you are registered. If you're successful, you should be registered by May 30th. We also will have a second webinar for those who were successful in getting their proposals accepted about all things COE conference, and that will take place on May 26th. And I think that's it for my submission timelines. If I've forgotten something, please, or you have questions, just put them into the Q&A. And yes, I am turning it over to Andrea.
Thank you, Angelica. So for 2022, our conference theme, as we mentioned, is Opportunity Matters, Discovering Solutions, Expanding Horizons. But because college access and success programs represent a very broad range of programs and organizations that support students and advocate for college opportunity, we have additional themes that relate to this. And we are really looking for conference submissions that are related to practical ways that people can think about how we do our practice and how we can expand the work that we do. Next slide, please. So we have some strands that we are very interested in, and we certainly encourage, but we don't require submissions of proposals that connect theory and practice to these strands and themes. But it would be really great if you could kind of think about how your session might possibly fit into one of these strands. So one of the strands will be Start Smart for new professionals. As Angelica mentioned, we have over 500 new professionals each year, and these new professionals attend the conference. And so they're really thinking about ways that they can onboard, that they can get some information that will make their onboarding and their transition into their positions smoother. What are those kinds of things that they might need? We are always very interested in submissions that focus somewhat on research and evaluation related to college access and success. So what are effective practices and effective practices that are based in some research and evaluation? We're also interested in programs that talk about career pathways for professionals, but also career pathways, particularly for students. What are some of those programs and effective practices that help students think about ways that they can find careers? We're always interested in STEAM-focused programs and always interested in programs that focus on veterans, because there is not a whole lot of research and effective practice out there for working with veterans. So, if you are interested in any of those and they fit into one of those strands, That's fabulous. All right, next slide. And then in addition to that, we are always interested in additional topic areas that focus on effective programming for some of our subpopulations. We mentioned veterans earlier, but also adult learners. We don't always have a whole lot of submissions around working with adult learners, LGBTQA students, foster care and homeless students, limited English proficient students, and students with disabilities. We are also very interested in effective practices for working with students in the areas of developmental education, effective practices for incorporating technology. And we know that that's something that we need to update annually because that field changes so quickly. And so many people have learned so much in working with during the pandemic. But, you know, I'm an old school person. I started out working with TRIO when we had our computers, you know, had less megabytes than my computer than my phone does today. And so, you know, we know how quickly that changes annually. And so we're always interested in incorporating technology, communicating across generations. You know, how do we do that when you're working not only with staff, but also with students? How do you promote your program to your stakeholders and to policymakers? Always interested in ways to improve program evaluation and assessment, and then also how to use data to improve and promote college access and success programs. So any of those areas we're always very interested in. Next slide, please, Angelica. And then also, when you go in to submit your program, you will see that we're asking you to address some different criteria. And first of all, oh, you have to go back, sorry. So when you go in there, you will see that it's a form site and we only accept electronic formats. So we won't take a paper one unless you have an exception, in which case you would email us for that exception. But this is the link to get into that submission. And we are asking for specific things in addition to the title and a description through a 75-word abstract. We're asking you for learning objectives, and Amy's going to go through all of these in some depth. The session format, how does this topic relate to our conference theme? We're asking for a conceptual or theoretical format. What is it based on? Are you submitting more than one session? That's going to be important because we tend to accept only one submission from any presenter and then specific presenter information. So you'll be asked to fill all of these in. And Amy is now going to walk you through all of these specifics of each of these criteria. All right, Amy.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I'm super happy to walk through this with you because like I said in the intro, I didn't know how any of this worked when I came into the world of TRIO and COE and professional conferences, but it certainly isn't nearly as daunting as it seems. And I think it's a really great thing for you to do professionally if you're kind of blooming in the field, like recently got your master's or your PhD, if you are planning to step into leadership, or just if you have a super great idea that's worthy of sharing with others or a great practice. So as Andrew said, there's just a few steps you have to fill out walking into this application. So the first is to attach an abstract, which is your session description. This is what will actually end up in the conference program. So be sure to avoid any acronyms or abbreviations. Include what the topic is and what would motivate a reader to attend your session, right? So make sure that you summarize the content and explain what programs, specific programs would be make sense to attend. So if you're a pre-college program, you'd want to say this is for Upward Bound and Talent Search, or if you were an EOC or a VUB, you'd mention this is for adult programs. So you want to let conference attendees know what your session's really all about. Oops. And then can I advance slide? I cannot, so I guess I have to, oh, there we go. So then the next thing we ask for is a solid session description. So again, this goes a little more in depth with who is the appropriate audience, and it links the session to the conference theme. So as Andrew says, be thinking about how what you want to talk about relates to the overall theme of the conference, and explicitly state the takeaways for attendees. Because if I'm coming to your conference, what am I leaving with? It shouldn't be they'll think about this or they'll hear about that. I want to do more than just think or hear when I'm in your session. I want to be able to leave feeling renewed with a solid foundation for something new, or better understanding of something that I had before, right? So we want to use words that entice an attendee to come to the session and to know that I'm leaving with something, right? So next slide, please. Great. So thinking a little bit about the abstract, here is an example of an abstract, right? So the barriers that prevent success for low-income first-generation students vary by institution. However, the skills and approaches students need to overcome can be similar. Discuss with 2 leaders from 2 different campuses that how they design pre-college programs from both urban and rural, right? So this is telling you that this is a pre-college program, but that if you were at an urban or a rural campus, that this would still be applicable to you. And then it says, examine how to assist students in developing the internal competence and strength to meet academic challenges. So I know what I'm doing when I come to this session. I know that it's going to be applicable to me. So that's an example of how you would write an abstract. Of course, there are other ways to do that too. One of the reasons I like to use this one as an example is you can see that the submitter made the effort to find a co-presenter that was from a campus that was different from them. So the more universal appeal we can have in our sessions, the better. This is a very large conference. And so when people need to make breakout sessions, you don't want to go to a session that is very, very narrow in definition, because then it reaches a small audience. So if you can put together panels or groups or co-presenters that have expertise similar to yours on the topic that you have, but that have used it with a different audience or that have used it at a different venue, that gives more appeal. So next slide, please. Thank you. So as Andrew mentioned, we're going to ask you to address some learning objectives. So most presenters tell attendees how to do something, but for COE, we look for sessions that help attendees think through something, right? This isn't a how-to. So attendees should learn new techniques and approaches that strengthen their skills in the process. Winning proposals identify no more than 3 learning outcomes for attendees. So we're not asking you, you don't have to develop a whole bunch. 3 is more than enough. But you want to make sure that you're using outcome verbiage for these objectives. So for example, let's use words like create a plan instead of gain understanding, or strengthen skills of learn about. Learning outcomes should focus on how the attendees will behave or act differently because they interacted with you and attended your session. So any questions about that, or is that making sense, the learning objectives? I don't see questions in the chat. Okay, so moving on. Thank you for advancing the slides. So one of the things we want to be thinking about when we submit our successful proposal is the format, the technology, and the activity. So PowerPoints or Prezi visuals are okay, but you really don't want to read to the audience. You need to be interactive and engaging. So how would you do that? Sometimes you can give attendees handouts, templates, kits, links are always nice so that they have some kind of takeaways. You can host idea exchanges as part of your time together. So it's not just you presenting, but you're including in your session description that there will be time for the attendees to share with one another. Again, having partners is always great, especially trio partners with non-trio counterparts. So if you're an SSS program, you might want to have an administrator from campus, or you might want to have CEO of a nonprofit in your community that you partner with. Those are examples. If you're a TRIO program that's pre-college and you've worked well with a high school principal, or you've worked well with a school board member, you could talk about how you impact policy by having someone like that co-present with you. So just be thinking that this conference, COE takes a lot of pride in that we're not just TRIO talking to TRIO, that this is high quality professional development. So be thinking about that as you're designing your session. So again, panels are really encouraged. So sessions formatted for the COE Ed Talks. This was an idea, Andrea, I'll give her credit for this. I won't call her the grandmother of the idea, but Andrea, when TED Talks became really cool, she said, let's do Ed Talks. And so COE started this format where it's 15 to 20 minutes of a short, high interest audience or activity topic. Sorry, I'm struggling for words here. 15 to 20 minutes of a really cool, very timely, appropriate topic. The expert gives a brief talk, and then the audience spends a lot of time grappling with some questions, group discussion, and questions and answers. And it's really exciting. So when you're thinking about submitting, let us know, is this going to be for a regular breakout session, or are you asking to be considered for a COE Ed Talk? Okay, so next slide. I will say I did an Ed Talk when we were in New York City. I discussed how to engage family, and it was super exciting, but it's a big audience. So lots of fun, but you really have to approach that format differently than how you'd approach a breakout session. But COE is definitely, we welcome you to submit either format, and we look forward to hearing from you. Do that. So again, the next part of your application is going to ask you, how is it related to the conference theme, or is connected to one of our suggested sub themes? So remember, we want things that are relevant and timely, because people are paying a nice chunk of change to come to this. They have expectations that this is the premier conference for TRIO and college access professionals. So they're coming, they're expecting high quality sessions. So we want to hear from you, and we want to know that what you're going to talk about relates to our bigger goals. And so you want to take some time to just explain that in this application. Next slide, please. Okay, I think this goes back to Andrea.
I think this is you, Amy. We put you
This
in
is
there.
still me. Okay.
No, I think it is you, Andrea.
Yeah,
Oh, is it?
Andrea's my
Okay,
voice.
I think this was actually a Christie. So, but I'll put this in because this was something that I had added along the way. We didn't used to have it. And we decided at one point, it's not enough for someone to say, I'm going to do this presentation because I've done it all my life with my program. And so we did add in that we think it's really important that somehow or another you are able to explain that what you're presenting has some sort of a theoretical or conceptual foundation, or that it's grounded in relevant experience. So we do ask people to talk a little bit about what the foundation of framework is for your presentation. It can be practice-based, but we want to talk to you. We want you to explain in there about how it is practice-based, or do you have some kind of a theoretical foundation from the literature, from research that you're basing the presentation on. And so this helps to connect what you're explaining or what you're presenting, your individual practice, to some broader conceptual framework. And we don't want a dissertation, because sometimes we'll read one and it's like, oh my gosh, this is a 5-page explanation. We don't want that, but we do want you to present just a little bit. So if you're doing an advising one, perhaps you might say, and I'm basing this on appreciative inquiry, or I'm basing this on a proactive advising theory. And you might just have a couple of lines in there, or I'm basing this on practice, on these sorts of things that we've done during the past couple of years in our program. So this will be a little piece that we've asked you to include in there. Okay, next slide.
Andrea, I think I just want to chime in on this, that it's really
Sure.
that we do this conceptual framework as part of the application, simply because the trends we're seeing with Department of Ed. So in the last 5 or 6 years, we're seeing more and more emphasis in the grant application process for TRIO programs that we have strong design and that we're connected to theory. And so I really think that COE is aligning themselves with the department's movement in that direction to say this isn't just about practice, but it's about implementing best practices, and it's about implementing evidence-based theory, right? Evidence-based practice. So that we're not just a compliance program where we're checking off the box that we're providing services because the department says that's a required service, but that we're providing services because we know that's what students or clients need.
Thanks, Amy. I appreciate that. And, you know, I also have, so I'm, Brian and Barney will appreciate this. Part of this is my NASFA background, but the first time that I submitted a paper to present at NASFA, probably about 8 years ago, that was a question that they also asked. And I had to think, you know, that's really important because I want to know that I'm really presenting on something that's an effective practice. And then I have some literature to back up what I'm doing, that I'm just not saying, well, I'm presenting this because I've always done it this way, but I do have something to back that up, that it's an effective practice. So thanks, Amy.
So this is
Brian,
me.
you're next.
Yes, I am up, yes. So we're related to all this with talking about high quality professional development, you know, linking it to conceptual frameworks and also learning outcomes. I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of what COE's professional competencies are. So I've been part of the Partnership Standards and Initiatives Committee. This is my 3rd year serving on that committee, and that's part of the COE board. And we were tasked back in 2019 to really look at and develop professional competencies for college access and success professionals. So the committee worked diligently over the last couple of years, taking some leads from some national organizations such as NASPA, and we're throwing acronyms around, but that's the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators. And we looked at also some other associations in our field, like the Academic Advising Associations, NACADA, and some others, just to as examples of what is out there when it comes to, you know, what are the learning outcomes we really want our staff to have once they attend a professional development. And so what we did was we developed 11 competencies over the last 2.5 years, and we're in the process of implementing them. And it's not, you know, you're not going to have to do anything when submitting this proposal, but I'll just go through briefly what they are. The different categories are law, policy, and governance, advocacy, advising, research, assessment and evaluation, student learning, social justice, equity and inclusion. Could you go back, please? Angie, thank you.
Sorry about that.
No problem. I have them memorized, but I was looking at the slide. Leadership, organizational, and human resources, and of course, technology. So these are broad-based categories, but when an attendee, you know, goes through a workshop or a professional development activity, you know, the goal is to have a learning outcome in which, you know, your workshop or that event is at one of 3 levels, which is a foundational level, which, like we said, it could be first-time attendees are going to these workshops to learn a little bit about this new profession, and then intermediate level, and then advanced for those who, you know, have been in the profession for a while, and they would be, you know, taking on different duties. So, you know, what's going to happen once the review committee looks at proposals, they will be grouping them, you know, into these different competency categories, and, you know, putting a rough, you know, level of either foundational and intermediate or advanced label on them. So, I mean, that's it for now. Down the road, I expect these to be more at the forefront, you know, of the conference and other COE professional development events. So, Barney, do you have?
Yeah, I'll just add one little piece onto that. Kind of, as Brian said, this work started in 2019. I just joined the committee recently, and so it's an iterative process. So this is kind of, it's working its way throughout the COE organization, and the conference is a key place for these professional competencies to be deployed. And so one of the things that Brian and I did independently recently was we analyzed last year's program to see where everything would have landed in here. And just kind of by way of observation, as we did our analysis, in terms of potential growth areas in the professional competencies moving forward are in history, values, and philosophy. There weren't a terribly lot of sessions related to that. Advocacy and leadership are three areas where there's definitely growth potential. The one other thing I will add to that was actually heartening was there is a lot of praxis-focused work on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And that's amazing. And there's a lot of cross-pollination between, praxis, applicable work in programs in particular ways, and broader equity and inclusion. That my one observation in that is and this was part of the discussion about the kind of the beginning, the intermediate, and the advanced. Some folks, there wasn't a lot for beginners, and there wasn't a lot for advanced too. So if you think about that as well, helping folks get a baseline understanding of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion work would be useful, as well as having a venue for seasoned Jedi experts to, problem solve bigger, more advanced opportunities. So that was my one little piece, and I'll shut up now.
So this is one general tip that I'm throwing in. They've allowed me to keep my 70s slide in here, and just 4 general tips for good presentations. And that is that you should be able to give your presentation without your slides. So just my big general tip is, and your slide should not be able to give your presentation without you. So just remember to avoid talking heads throughout this whole thing. Think of your I always like to think of your presentation as a conversation that you are having with the participants. And, media is wonderful, and we need that for our visual learners. I think it really can add to it, but that should not be the entire presentation. All right. Turning this back to Amy.
Great. So some resources that you might want to use in making your presentation: SlideShare. NASPA has a great set of examples on how to do good presentations or how to make the most of your conference. Prezi is kind of a more up-to-date, sexy software than PowerPoint. So if you want to get away from PowerPoint, Prezi's there. If you do want to use PowerPoint, but you're sick of all the same old backgrounds, presentationmedia.com, which isn't on here, but presentermedia.com has some great, really cool new backgrounds and templates for PowerPoints. Poll Everywhere is an awesome little tool that you can build in polls and votes with your audience that they can vote just from their phone. That helps engage the audience when you don't have time for a really big question discussion, but you want to just find out a baseline of who in the room is new or who in the room has experience with what you're about to talk about. Poll Everywhere is fun. Forbes has a great little clip on public speaking lessons from the greatest talks. Angelica, thank you. She mentioned Canva. I love Canva. I grew up on Microsoft Publisher, and Canva is just like, it is Publisher on steroids. I love it. It's super easy to use, intuitive, makes some great PowerPoints. And then who does not want to read an article entitled "Conference Sessions Do Not Have to Suck"? So I think he wins gold star.
That's my little one in there. I love that article.
So so the point is that you have a lot of resources, whether it be out there on the web or through all these great people like Barney and Brian and Andrea that are here to support you. We want to see you present. We want to see you share. We are one community, and we're only as strong as each each individual. And so if you want to present, but maybe don't feel ready to present at the COE annual conference, one way to hone your skills into practice is to look locally. So there's local college access and success or college attainment networks across the nation. You can always look to them. Look to your local state meetings. Or if you're in California, you guys don't have states, you have chapters. And so your chapter meetings are available. And then there's the 10 regional conferences. And so so the US is broke up into these 10 regions that you see here on this slide. And each region has its own conference where you can present. And usually they're pretty supportive audiences. A good place to hone your presentation skills, but to also learn. The best way to learn is to teach. So if you're presenting at a state or a regional, you might get a lot of feedback and ideas and learn what other people are doing. And then by the time you come to COE to present, you bring all those examples with you. And so I really do encourage you, gold star to you for being here and participating today and saying, I'm thinking about applying to present. And I want to say we would love to have your application, but also be thinking about other places. I know some of our state meetings struggle with that whole trio talking to trio concept. So if you do have a good partnership that's trio and non-trio, think about bringing that to your state association because people could really benefit from that. So yeah, lots of other places to present and to build your network of support.
Yeah, I think we're back to you, Jelly.
Yeah, so hopefully everyone that's with us is ready to submit and you would like to submit for our annual conference. Again, that we gave you the link down here. It's also on our website. You will also receive this in the slide deck, so you can just click on it. Again, I want to remind you that all applications for proposal submissions are due April 4th. So please, I think we give you a good chunk of time to get this into us, to really think about what you would like to do and then submit. We don't anticipate any extensions on this. We as COE are really trying to hone in on all of our sessions, get everybody prepared by no later than May 30th. And so if we hold to that timeline, then we do have to not extend our deadline for proposal applications. And now here is our information. There's a lot of people that put this together. So whoever you feel most comfortable contacting, please do not hesitate. If they don't know the answer, or if I don't know the answer, we definitely will find it out for you. Again, Andrea Reeve, who's with us today, Christy Hardbarger, who could not be with us today, they are our COE Conference Program co-chairs. They take care of the entire program, making sure that we have great presentations, that we have a lot of diversity in our presentations, and that we're not missing any real key topics. Also, we had Amy Verlaminek with us today. She is a former COE chair from our board of directors. She's also really involved in all things COE. We are so grateful to have her continued support on everything. Myself, I am the liaison between our board and the COE staff in Washington, D.C. We also have a few people who weren't with us today, Sharante Maxwell and Galen Hastings. They're our conference program co-chairs. So they take care of all the fun activities, making sure we have a good venue, all that kind of things is under their realm. Chris George is our current board of directors chair. And then we did have Brian and Barney with us today, who is part of our Partnership Standards and Initiatives Committee, as they went over the competencies. We're all learning this together. And so this is really exciting for us to implement, even in baby steps, for this particular presentation. All right, so we've talked a lot during this time, so we want to make sure that you don't have any pressing questions. So if you have any questions or want us to go back on a slide or just want more information on a subject, please put it into the Q&A so we can answer. It's been a very quiet group today.
Jelly, I wanted to add one thing, and that is that sometimes we will look at presentations and we'll say, you know, this would be a great presentation if they would add a partner, if they would add, you know, another person. And so we might come back to you and say, we will accept your presentation if you would consider adding a community partner to this, or we might have two presentations that are very similar. And we'd say, would you be willing to work with this other person and combine these two presentations? So it may be that, you know, there might be a condition on the acceptance. So sometimes we will do that. And so, you know, we may communicate with you after we've gone through the initial selection process. And I might mention that all of the submitted sessions are reviewed by 2 reviewers and then an entire committee. So there's a 2-part review that goes through. So they are peer reviewed, and then an entire committee review.
And just building off of what Andrea just said, another thing that we may do is, as we told you, or I think Amy said this, that we would really like broad sessions that you really have to think on the national perspective, right? That even though you may be in a rural program or a rural community, you got to think more broadly about how it would impact the community at large that you're talking about. But also you may have the opportunity to say, hey, well, I am from a rural program. Maybe I should bring in a program from a suburban or urban to bring in that context as well. So that's another way. If you if we see it in the presentation description, there's another way that we might reach out to you too, saying this is fabulous, but we think that you should you should collaborate with another urban program or maybe a suburban program.
I see one of our participants is Concetta Bullard from South Carolina, and I'm on the call here from Montana, and her and I did a presentation together at SAOP where I spoke about American Indian students and how we serve our American Indian students in Montana. And she came in and spoke about how she serves American Indian students in South Carolina. So while we're on completely different geographic ends of the continent, we definitely experience similar things when serving students. So that's a very tangible example of how you can partner with someone in another part of the country, but still really drive home something that you're passionate or good at, or, you know, with certain topics. So just want to say hi to you because I see you on here as a participant. And yeah, so other questions?
And I guess another good example might be that we had a McNair person call us and say that they had wanted to present on, they wanted to look at McNair programs that were doing some McNair research academies. And so and they said, is this a good idea? Sent an email and I said, that's great, but can you get some other programs who are doing it? They actually sent out a survey to McNair programs across the country and found 5 other programs that were doing it. And then they did a panel with 5 programs. And so I think that was another way to get great representation of people who were doing different kinds of McNair academies, and had a great panel.
Well, we appreciate your time today. Again, you will receive our information. You'll receive all of our emails from the slide deck and all of the links. If you do have questions later on, we'd love to hear from you. And more importantly, we would love to see your submissions. So we are going to conclude this webinar, but we hope to be working with you and seeing your presentation by April 4th. Panelists, I appreciate you being with us today, and this ends our webinar.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.